conditions. So if that means in your budget you have $5 to spend and you have to choose between your chronic condition and food, that leaves you with $1 left. Well, thank goodness McDonald's came out with a dollar menu, but that still doesn't get you much for your $5. So I like to highlight that. Next. So on this slide, what you'll see is a bar graph of the percentage of all Americans with chronic conditions by the number of chronic conditions. And on one axis, the vertical axis, we have the percentage of Americans, and on the horizontal axis, we have the number of chronic conditions. And the main thing here is that 8.7% of all Americans have at least 5 chronic conditions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Multiple chronic conditions can occur, meaning that they can exist with another condition or with other multiple conditions. So I think when we talk about some of the patients that go into multi-system organ failure, they didn't just all of a sudden have their kidney, liver, heart, and brain not working. It was a cascade of one after the other. But it's a really good example if you look at the big picture of what that patient's primary diagnosis is, and then what we did for them, and what domino effect that created, how even though you help a patient and family and team with one service line and one treatment plan, you can really have multiple other body systems and other treatment plans that you have to keep control of or track of, I like to say. And keeping the team on track is, I think, one of the things that we do. So we can't not look at this and not realize we're not just a group of professionals serving the kidney population. We're also serving our other professional customers who are our cardiology service line, our pulmonary service line, our orthopedic service line, our vascular service line. I mean, the list goes on and on. And I always hope that we never really have a cardiac event or a neuro event, but sometimes people do have a thrombotic or an embolic episode, which ends up being a heart attack or a stroke. And that can completely change the picture. So it's just very interesting that many people can actually live with their chronic conditions and other chronic conditions, and their quality of life can be okay. So we can look at this one of two ways. All types of people are affected by chronic disease, although older populations of people and women are more likely to report one or more chronic conditions. And this information presents information, or the information I'm going to give you presents information about the prevalence of chronic disease and multiple chronic conditions, as well as the common chronic conditions for adults and children. In 2010, over half, which was 51.7% of all Americans, had at least one chronic condition, and almost 1/3, which was 31.5% of all Americans, had multiple chronic conditions. So we're going to dig a little deeper into chronic conditions. We're going to talk a little bit more about the one condition and service line that we know, kidney, and what that means to us. Because I think that we're charged with educating a lot of other service lines about the treatment plan and the primary day-to-day challenges and barriers that the patient family have, whereas some of the other service lines, cardiology, rheumatology, those can be kind of secondary in nature, but the kidney, once I think you have that chronic kidney condition, becoming so frail, and they're in end-stage renal disease or kidney failure, or they're on the transplant, that's like your #1 priority. every day, day in, day out, making sure that patient gets their medication, making sure they have transportation, making sure that regardless of the weather, they can actually get to dialysis, or if they're at home, they'll have power and they can use their dialysis machinery. So I do kind of put the kidney up there. If you don't have your kidneys and you don't have dialysis, you're not going to be able to do one of the body's most important functions, which is to filter the blood. And without that filtering of the blood, you can't adequately pump the body full of blood, which means oxygenate your body, your heart, and your brain, and then what? So that's always how I kept the cardiac surgeons and neurosurgeons in check. So because multiple chronic conditions can co-occur, that means two things. One, they can occur at the same time as another condition. So I gave the example of kidney failure along with liver failure. That's perhaps what that critical care patient looks like. But there can also be congestive heart failure with kidney failure, and you may see that very fragile patient in dialysis clinic, right? And we do such a good job keeping them in balance that really it just takes one thing going wrong, i.e. their insurance no longer covers one of their 12 medications, and it's the one medication that they need to keep them going. Or they've had a kidney transplant, and for whatever reason, their insurance no longer covers their anti-rejection medication, and they miss just 2 doses while we're sorting that out. Those folks can't miss their medication. Or the patient that becomes hypertensive, despite following all other rules. The other thing is that chronic conditions can be visible. So how many of you know of the saying, the pink puffers and blue blowers? So the pink puffers and the blue blowers describe COPD, so patients that can't properly oxygenate their blood. And blue blowers are the folks that are hypoxic, so they never, with their late end-stage heart and pulmonary disease, they can never completely oxygenate their blood. So those folks often have a different color about them, right? They can look kind of ash or a little bluish in their lips or their fingernails, or they can always look pink and red hot because they're always overfeeding, or they're always short of breath. That's an example of a visible chronic condition. The other is, and this is not a very good one, but one I like to highlight, for the brittle diabetic who has had neuropathy and had difficulty maintaining their skin, and you see visibly their feet looking darker, necrotic. That is also a visible sign of a chronic condition, which would be diabetes. Chronic conditions may be invisible, meaning that you can't see them. So stroke is an example of a chronic condition that is invisible. AFib is an example. All these, at the drop of a hat, can create a scenario that can become life-threatening. So I'd like to highlight that because you never know when you're in the middle of a consultation or a family meeting with some of these very fragile folks with chronic conditions, when something you can see or not see can cause a bigger problem. It goes from being a chronic problem to a very acute problem, which you may have to help advocate for. So I'm going to go a little bit more into depth and provide a few examples throughout these slides. So next. So according to the Centers for Disease Control, kidney disease is increasing as a public health problem associated with diabetes and hypertension and related to risk factors such as obesity and cardiovascular disease. So this is a really high-level public health type definition. I use this because it is what is available on the publicly facing website. So when you have a family that has a new diagnosis or maybe a new family member who is new to the picture and wanting to learn about the disease process, you got to know that one of the first hits, in addition to WebMD, Wikipedia, and probably the Mayo Clinic, is probably some of the CDC health fact materials that come up. So it's important to know, how do they learn about their condition, and in what language, what bullet points do these resources cite information about the disease? Because that really can create some challenges or advantages when they're talking with the healthcare provider. Because you're going to get the patient and family who finds out way more about their condition, right, than they do from their provider. And that can take the folks like us that actually spend time with them and problem solve and do some open-ended, question and answer to help them meet their needs, find out what they're really thinking and what they're really worried about. They may be worried about something that is completely irrelevant and a very rare situation, but because it's getting a top hit on the web search, and you can pick up your phone and find information, with just a few clicks, it's a pretty scary world out there. So I'd like to think about this a little more in terms of what general lay people see when they hear someone has kidney disease. And I'm going to pick on some folks whose faces I recognize in the room, and that'll leave me room to pick on some new folks later. So Melissa, when you're working with folks out in the community, and you talk about your population, what is some of their impression of what people with kidney disease look like?
Like, they don't even have a clue that kidney disease even exists. So then when you go into, your kidney filters, you keep your blood clean, and they're like, oh, there's no knowledge about, kidneys, I guess.
Holly?
It's just like Melissa, talking with other people, not in house here too, asking where I work dialysis, what is kidney disease, and some people don't even know what dialysis, what organs are you working with, so it is a big knowledge piece, and educating people.
Gina?
I would concur. When I tell people I'm a nephrology social worker, they say, "You're what?" And then you go further to explain, a lot of people don't even know the area.
Michele?
I guess intermediate dialysis, I wasn't very familiar with it. But when I previously first started telling people dialysis, I could never live on a machine. That people just, when they hear dialysis, it's that automatic, you're living on that machine. And just trying to educate that there's more to the life of a dialysis patient.
What about how people perceive the fistula, patients with a fistula? What do you think the general public's impression when they see a bulging vein or blood vessel looks like?
Hard sell.
I had a teenager ask me if that patient was maybe, or the person, because we are, was using heroin.
Little old ladies who wear long sleeve shirts because they're afraid people see their needle marks from dialysis. I'm going to a birthday party, but it's hot. I gotta find a long sleeve shirt that's like fitting, so no one will think I do drugs.
Really, these are really important things to talk about, and so we have to get past some of these because these are also part of our everyday communities, neighborhoods, families, and even other professionals' biases, right? Perception. So I don't know if Julie from UW, my fellow P social worker, is on the line, but I'm going to cite something that she taught me early on in my UW career. and we were a very, very small team. This is when we were in our old children's hospital. So we were divided by infant, toddler, preschoolers, and then adolescents, which I'm not good with adolescents, obviously, and our oncology population. Again, I'm not good with them. I mean, things that I can fix or that have tubes and lines and that was just one step away from the ICU or from the adult hospital where we can move people, right? So she shared with me one day after round, perception is reality. And I thought, where are we going with this? The way I was perceived as the primary nurse in rounds with the team, standing over the bed of the patient, parent or caregiver in the corner of the room, talking about the patient was reality to the patient. So perception is reality. So if we perceive someone to have needle marks and bulging veins, our reality is that they're doing something, right, that we don't want to talk about, whether it's abusing illicit drugs or they have a medical condition that's obviously horrible or requires a lot of time. And that's where empathy comes in, right? It's because we're empathetic professionals that we understand there's more to the story than just that first impression. So that's where us as leaders can really help with other professionals and service lines, move them past that initial perception and help them develop a deeper understanding so we can be more effective teammates, but it can also help shape their new reality so that they see the patient family in a holistic way. I also like to talk about the typical treatment for hypertension, which includes change in diet, elimination of salt, increased exercise, medication, and stress management techniques. And some of these techniques can include meditation, visualization, and prayer. Okay, so you take someone that has kidney disease and they have renal hypertension, and you have someone from a different discipline. I think we're in the wellness wing of UW right now, who comes in to talk about mindfulness, stress reduction. We might not be able to take away some of that patient family stress because they have to get here, they have to walk about a mile from the parking lot all the way to the entrance of the clinic, and they have to walk a half mile more from where they got in the clinic to navigate where they want to go. So just from that activity alone and that fight or flight of their blood pressure can already be sky high. The other thing too about the McDonald's Happy Meal, we had some families that would come visit their children or even their elderly parents on weekends, and one of the family members may take a break and run out to McDonald's. They would pick up lunch for everybody. And so for the kidney patient who is on a very prescriptive, rigid diet, no salt, a certain amount of protein, this, that, and the other, if they come back with something in a McDonald's bag, does that mean they are non-compliant? No, because I found out that you can go to McDonald's drive-thru and you can ask for a quarter pounder made low salt, no salt, or flat out say to them, I'm a kidney patient and I need a no salt patty. I need my sauce on the side. I need fries without any salt. And they will make that order special for you. And I appeased our nutritionist by even being able to pull up online the nutritional facts for those McDonald's menu items so that patients could plan what they wanted to eat from McDonald's. And that may be where we have to meet them because they can afford that. They can afford whatever is off the dollar menu. So those are just some creative problem-solving ways that I like to just meet people where they're at. Perception's reality, just because they have a McDonald's bag or just because they have a large soda doesn't mean it's low sodium, or doesn't mean that it's caffeinated, or doesn't mean it has alcohol in it. It could be It could be meeting all those other nutritional needs, but it could be the one thing that that patient wants that helps them with their quality of life. So next. So just gonna breeze through this, but this was that national snapshot of chronic conditions. Hypertension is number one. If you move completely down the list, what you don't see in the national snapshot of chronic conditions is kidney disease. Next, and again, this was from AHRQ. This is from our Wisconsin long-term care functional screens done at Aging and Disability Resource Centers. So this was the top 10 reported diagnoses for folks who had to have the long-term care functional screen. And what I thought was interesting was right at about number 11 or 12 was end-stage renal disease. And the percentage was actually quite high because some of these that made it into the top 10, such as all the cardiovascular diagnoses, I grouped together. So each of them, angina, congestive heart failure, myocardial infarction, they may have all been like 3%, 3%, 3%, but together they made almost 10, so that's how they made it to my top 10. But when I took these diagnoses singularly, end-stage renal disease were right up there at the top. So that's where I'm gonna motivate you all to help me, help others who work on the state health plan and who work on policy, to really highlight the work that you do and why it is a public health concern, and why we need to better educate the public, why we better need to educate up-and-coming students and emerging professionals about the important work that we do. And again, this was just at Aging and Disability Resource Centers in all 72 counties, and it was only from the data from long-term care functional screens, both of which children and adults get to help them enter publicly funded long-term care. So who knows about the long-term care functional screen? Okay, so I'm going to put Stephanie on the spot and have Stephanie give us her social work definition or factoid about what the screen is and why as social workers and nurses we need to be familiar with what it is.
Well, the long-term functional screen, it's important to know the whole aspect of the person. Because if you ask them to do things on your own, they'll say, oh yeah, but then you'll find out maybe there's a neighbor helping them with it. And the other thing is that they have some bad days and some good days. So if you catch them on a good day, they might forget about their bad days. So you gotta remind them to like think of it as something. And then also is their eligibility, and then depending on what their score is how much funding that they would be able to get for their care. So that's also why it's important to make sure you capture everything. And I think nurses and social workers working together, because there's some things that a social worker might not think of or know about, but the nurse does. And so you can collaborate together and put that on there.
Like on Monday morning, I might say, Stephanie, this patient had McDonald's twice this weekend. The family came to see them. It was great. Then when we're doing our discharge planning, we might realize that in their little home community, that's what those folks have access to food-wise. Or that the food that they're getting from the local food pantry is going to give them a diet that's high in sodium because they get a lot of soup. Or that their family tradition is they like to go to fish fry. So that's fine too. But knowing those little bits and pieces of the story, those 2 or 3 examples right there tell me that a person is not meeting their need in some way. They're either not making their meals for themselves, someone's providing food for them some other way, and they may need help with meal preparation, or they flat out don't have the resources. We use the peanut butter and jelly sandwich example in the screen because it measures activities of daily living as well as independent activities of daily living. So the bathing and dressing part, maybe they need some assistance intermittently, like after they have just had a procedure, or maybe if they've had an episode of pneumonia, or they could be so obese and so fragile at this point that they're pretty bedridden, they're not bathing regularly, and all the cue you have is really the smell. Or from a home visiting CNA, you may hear about the hoarding. So these are areas that you can capture the ADLs and IADLs, and the funding that Stephanie spoke about. It's not about the primary healthcare insurance. That's separate. We're talking about long-term care health insurance. So this would be funding that would help them otherwise stay out of a nursing home, right, or skilled nursing. And it would also help to provide some funding, whether they chose one package or another, an MCO versus IRIS, to help them get their home-based nursing care services, like a nursing assistant to come in and help them twice a week with that. Someone to help them with housekeeping services, Meals on Wheels delivery. So this information is really important. We talked a little bit about what wasn't listed here. In 2016, end-stage renal failure and kidney disease was the 12th top chronic condition. I'm beginning to look at 2018 now. And that was amongst 20,000 contacts at ADRC statewide. And 3,000 individuals identified as having some kind of renal condition or kidney disease. So does that piece of data surprise anyone?
I think we've all found it helpful to refer to the family care program. It gives them Title 19, it gives them transportation, it gives them shopping. Like you talk about meal preparation, most of my patients have trouble shopping and carrying in the groceries or spending that long in the grocery store. So it gives them a lot of things. It's sad that the new ADRC rules or family care rules are, there's a spouse there, they may not help with cleaning the house, even though the spouse can't do it. And that's sort of sad that somehow we've got to advocate to the state.
The wait list is quite long.
In some counties, Waukesha, they can get on right away.
In Dane, I mean, it's basically they say not to count on it until it becomes an entitlement in 2021.
So we're seeing in Waukesha, I think, are pretty open. That's where my patients are. And yours is open, right? The problem I see is the county has 30 days to assess, I believe. And once they refer it, there was 3 agencies in Waukesha County, I don't know if we're down to 2 again, but they have 45 days from when they get the referral. So you're talking a good 75 days.
Of which care and treatment for this patient and their family still has to occur.
Correct.
So FMLA will get them through about 6 weeks. Then it gets into, the 12-week window, right? Okay, at 12 weeks, they may be looking at losing their job. Okay, then that opens up a whole other can of worms for, okay, then maybe they can become eligible for food share. And then they can become eligible for other emergency funding and everything. We shouldn't have to let people get all the way to the brink of crisis. And I'm going to use crisis in this way because there's the other type of crisis. We're not talking about the other type of crisis, although that's important. But we shouldn't have systems in place that have these lower income, middle income folks, hardworking folks, have to get all the way down the line, and the daily worry, the incessant worry, if they even have a good paying job, or if their family even had some financial resources, and didn't live paycheck to paycheck. I don't even know that many professional 2-income families that can withstand enduring that length of time after a diagnosis of any body system, right? Whether it's cancer, heart, stroke. I mean, so you look at someone that's looking at a long-term treatment plan where they're going to need to be going to dialysis frequently, where they're going to need procedures frequently. And it's almost like we force these folks to then not work, a caregiver to not work, to then drive the Social Security disability income application. And that's not getting a paycheck in the mail to them and a deposit into their bank account so they can do all the things that they need to do. So I think that really puts a lot of burden on us in our health and wellness. So does that resonate with any of you all? What, like just that burden that we collectively share? And how many of you take that home with you? You know, I never dreamed on a Friday night in the middle of the summer that I would have to become Florence Nightingale / community social worker to a group of pretty independent teens. But all of a sudden, you know, I'm asking them if they know what sepsis is, and I'm asking them if they know what it means to have your kidney taken out. And I'm having a group of teenagers saying, well, I'll give them my kidney, as they order Pizza Hut, and then go to Culver's, and then somebody rolls in with McDonald's. I'm thinking, what's wrong with this person? So meeting people where they're at, that perception is reality, and just also realizing that we're vulnerable as professionals to carry that burden, and because we're empathetic, we're going to have those feelings. So learning how to keep that in check. So the role of the nurse and social worker. So here you'll see a picture of Claire Barton, a nurse leader. And Claire was a nurse providing tireless efforts to the injured and infirm. She was the founder of the American Red Cross. She's a good example of a nurse who provided leadership in not only caring for and doing tasks to take care of those with complex life-threatening illnesses and injuries, and with little positive outcomes, but she also provided system-level leadership in creating organizations such as the Red Cross. And so when I took some time to look up some of the folks that I met at our fall symposium and where they work and what they do, and then some of their community service and like the Derby Dash, the Got Your Dot initiatives, all the places where our paths may cross out in the community. That really describes all of us, right? If our local communities were at risk for flooding, we weren't just thinking about that in our 8-to-5 job. We were thinking about it even after we went home, because we probably had some neighbor or some family member that was going to be affected by that. So I left this part in here, but decided I would frame this section as talking about the role of the nurse and social worker. And as we move through the slides, what I'll do is I'll give you the bullet points from the framework of what I looked up to prepare that original nurse talk. Then you're going to help teach me and one another what that role looks like for you. So I also thought about Claire's leadership in today's healthcare environment, along with other weather-related emergencies we've had here in Wisconsin. And it caused me to think about what our role in helping the customers who have chronic kidney disease, whether they're dependent on dialysis or maybe on transplant lists, and when they're in the state of emergency, or when their community has been declared a disaster. And my key point here is careful thought, planning, skilled conversations, and swift triage and referral and transport needs need to take place in caring for this very fragile population. And I think in the fall I gave the example of if you've been displaced from Sauk County and perhaps you were going to the Sauk in Columbia County, and perhaps you got displaced from the dialysis clinic at DeVita, there off Highway the 23 in Adele, and all of a sudden you had to come to Sun Prairie DeVita. How are we going to get that person here? How are we going to get them out of that small little community way past resource if their roads are closed for daily death? You know, so we started having some of those conversations. And as we do some interactive group work, you'll see an example of the emergency preparedness toolkit that all the participants in our fall session got. I'll show you how you can go online to get one of these and order them one by one for your patients and families. And it's just an example of some governors appointed councils for people with disabilities who have had unique interests, have come together and collectively identified issues such as emergency preparedness, advocated to have something as simple as a go bag. And then these are people who are patients and families who've experienced some type of disability. and they have advocated for funding to have these toolkits. Several other states have reached out to us, and it's all part of that emergency preparedness. So I gave one to everybody at the fall presentation, because I said, hey, it's important to help the dialysis patients and families, or the chronic kidney patients and families. Look through these binders, prepare some materials, get all their advanced care planning and important documents in one place, and just help them be a little bit better organized and prepared. So next. In about 1:15, we're going to take a break. And then as we come back, what we'll do is we'll start getting a little more interactive. So here, how similar are the roles of nurses and social workers? So I took these bullet points originally from the American Nurses Association definition of nursing. So it defines our nursing practices: protection, promotion, and optimization of health and abilities. I like the word abilities. I've been talking about disabilities. So we really want to focus on patient abilities, and that's where in that long-term care functional screen, the ADL, activities of daily living, what they are able to do, independent activities of daily living, what they are able to do. We really want to focus and empower patients to do what they are able to do. Prevention of illness and injury, infection, and other complications are not uncommon. So, you know, getting vaccinations, getting access to medication, that can help to prevent additional illness and injury. Alleviation of suffering, treatment of human responses. This one I wasn't so sure about. I don't know so much that I treat people's human response, but I help guide them in their problem solving, and I give them pain medication. So that's a type of human response. And then advocacy and care. And that's really one of the ones that we'll keep as a key bullet point as we go through. So for you all, what does social work look like? And what does nephrology social work look like? Now I'm going to pick on Ashley.
I would say a lot of validation, just listening, trying to gauge where this patient has come from to land now in dialysis. If they're new to our center, or because I'm fairly new to dialysis, getting to meet the patients and find out, you know, their background, what's working for them, what's not, and what resources.
Laura.
Yeah, offering support, finding out what they want, what their, not what I perceive their needs to be, but what they perceive their needs to be.
I like that you framed it that way. Cindy. You can tell she's fresh out of school, right? She's got her definition of social work down.
I'm just into connecting the dots. I just think that can be the most important thing for people. Like, so many times there's so much information, but the true gift in communication is connecting the dots.
I like to think we're the guide through the healthcare maze. You know, everyone talks Greek when the patient comes. You know, phosphorus, potassium, keywords, the uremia, the albumin. What do we do with our health insurance? How do we normalize this? So we're sort of the guide through the maze, that they're going into this maze not knowing where to go.
Jean.
We provide supportive and therapeutic counseling for them, for patients and families to adjustment. There's a lot of loss when it comes to chronic disease, kidney disease. Really being an advocate, like many of you have said, listening to where what's like the priority for the patient, what do they need, and help them navigate through all of this. And sometimes we're the voice of reason, you know, connecting with a lot of the other disciplines, or even like organizational, politics, things like that. Like, how does this all fit together? How do we work together and communicate that, you know, and support the patient and their family?
I planted her in the room. I thought you wrapped that up really nice. Because we often forget about our role from that therapeutic standpoint, right? Every conversation we have is therapeutic. So next.
There's a little bit of resistance there.
So Stephanie and I had this love-hate relationship back in the fall. She was in charge of the PowerPoint, and we had to develop a new action plan because in the fall, the PowerPoint went way ahead, and I looked up at Stephanie and I didn't.
I didn't have to.
And I was like, oh my gosh, they're seeing something completely different than what I'm seeing. So I apologize for having to turn my head and back on a little bit because Stephanie and I had given the stand going. So the role of the nurse and social worker. So just kind of to recap some of the skills we use and principles. We use the skill of communication through participating in conversations and using active listening. So I think I heard bits and pieces of that. We also use principles of motivational interviewing to yield more meaningful and helpful conversations with patients. So we have a whole motivational interviewing series and training. There's an introductory one and an advanced one that all aging and disability resource centers, information and assistance workers get. What I like that MetaStar, my partner for transition of care, has helped me do with other disciplines in transition of care coalition statewide, as well as the Wisconsin Hospital Association, is we've been teaching other providers and disciplines about motivational interviewing. And I have to be honest with you, I guess I used motivational interviewing my entire career. I've just never known that MI was MI until I came to central office and we had this whole training series. The social workers in our office own it. And so I like to think of you as social work leaders being able to teach other professionals about motivational interviewing, about also taking opportunities to go to trainings that are free, MetaStar offers them, or even some paid workshops. Mia Coyle is a big MI teacher. UW, I think Continuing Ed, Stevens Point has had some series. But I would encourage any other discipline that you work with in our hospital, if there are opportunities for continuing education or for you to bring in speaker or do a one-day or a half-day conference to really just do a high-level motivational interviewing training for your multidisciplinary team, and I guarantee you it will help get everyone on the same table, at least being able to kind of talk in the same way and ask questions in the same way and get that information out that you really need. Stephanie, do you have anything else to add on the MI part? Because I know we didn't get to touch on it in the fall as much. It was just like an introductory.
No, I don't think so. We were just talking about how that would be a good thing to symposium as well.
Well, we were talking about like patient care tax. I mean, because many of them have the least amount of opportunities in terms of maybe training, but it struck me when you said MI is, or I do know that told me that, and I think, you know, that might really benefit sometimes patient care technicians or the most time with folks, and just to create that awareness, I think would also empower them maybe to help connect the dots. But I was struck by what you said.
So I'm going to challenge us beyond our comfort zone here. How many of you communicate with patients in a coma or who are asleep? How's that go? They can communicate that. It takes a lot of presencing and a lot of pause. What about someone who's blind? How do you give a nod or show your facial expressions or your non-defensive body language? Same way. Someone who's deaf. I am very, very in tune with making eye contact with someone. And I will sit there and I'll wait until we make eye contact. And see, I just made it. Because I don't know if that patient is deaf or hard of hearing. And deafness or hard of hearing is one of the more frequently not diagnosed chronic conditions and disabilities for which we have resources, but can impact the patient's compliance, their understanding, their health literacy of their interpersonal dynamics with their spouse and family. We never listen. Or what if they have a cognitive issue? You know, the patient sitting there nodding and the family members in the back going, Is that a social dynamic, psychosocial dynamic going on there? Or should we be thinking this person has some memory issues? So there's a lot that can come out with communication, and I challenge you with the nonverbal or developmentally delayed population, or the deaf and hard of hearing population, or the blind population, or even that patient that's asleep. Start honing in on your communication skills. Be more aware. And if you'll be, I think, surprised to see how many of your other fellow professionals and then patients and family members perceive that to be a positive thing, for you to be going above and beyond, for you, she was great, he was great, for doing something that was as simple as a communication skill. Where we're not comfortable is with that disability population, or with that patient that's not walking and talking and able to engage. Next. And I said we take a break, and I got 1 more minute. So nurses and social workers have meaningful conversations with patients and their families with kidney disease. We should pay attention to the content of the information in these conversations. We can gather information about their attitudes, their challenges, and even more, their stories, in these conversations. So this really goes to help those folks that are new to practice understand that time that they take in talking with a patient and family, that's actually a conversation, and that there's a lot of very interesting information and an assessment and planning that you can get just from that conversation. To students, I tell them it's the story. Even to other disciplines, law enforcement, first responders, I know they don't want to hear the story, but they know who to come to if they need the details of the story, right? Or there's the backstory. There's all different ways where we frame the story, and it comes from a conversation. And this is why I advocate for groups like us to have interdisciplinary care teams, interdisciplinary care rounds. We did that at UW when we were starting to see a lot more frequent admissions. So we had the main service line, but often rehab wasn't at the table, and rehab was the driving force to getting this patient to be able to do X, Y, and Z after their primary reason for being there was over. So they might not be ready to be discharged on Friday. They might need a week longer of walking and bathing and building up their stamina. And it's just having a designated time when you can all come around the table and discuss things. Information that sometimes is not documented in the record. Now that we have electronic records in the subjective information, do you type out everything from the conversation? I don't even know that I can go to health psychology or other psychiatry or counselor notes and fully see a SOAP note that describes the detail of the conversation. So learning how to also document this conversation is important. And some of the most important bullet points of information that you could put in notes include a patient's or family's experiences, feelings, their abilities, their impairments or challenges that I can't get dressed, or you know, maybe they keep getting readmitted for a fever because in the summer they're wearing a long sleeve shirt to cover their fistula, right? That's my little Under Armour shirt I always wear. Their resources and their perspective. Next. And there I highlight the important bullet points. And next. So patients share these challenging experiences based on the type of chronic condition. So their type of kidney disease, you know, the percentage of damage or the percentage of function that they have. How long they've had the chronic condition. Oh, this is where I love the pediatric population, and when they finally graduate from high school, and then when they send me an invitation that they're going to be getting married. Because, you know what, that tells me that they have achieved so many developmental milestones and life milestones, and that somewhere along the line, folks like us have done a really good job, right? But early on, they might not have been part of the conversation. Their conversation might have been different than their caregiver's conversation. And now their new caregiver conversation, which could be their spouse, could be completely different. So how long a person has had their chronic condition. I think technology drives us to having a more long-term condition that we can deal with, keeping people alive longer, fixing them. They stay alive longer, they end up with a different condition. That's okay. And then what resources they have available. So I really challenge people that have a patient population base that is in very rural areas, on reservations, immigrant-based. When I worked on the dementia project over in Milwaukee, I was surprised that at the United Latino Community Center that they actually had several churches that had parishioners that took up a special collection for people who were immigrants. So they were undocumented, how do I say this, Wisconsin residents. They were immigrants, right? And they would go to adult day care that was paid for by the parishioners. So they weren't eligible for publicly funded long-term care or SSDI because they never got a Social Security card because they're not a U.S. citizen. So that's a really interesting story that I've had in my more recent career. So next, the final thing before we take a break. Nurses and social workers can impact health outcomes and impact admissions and readmissions. And in 2017, Wisconsin's readmission rate was approximately 18%. And apparently that's not very high. It also helped us develop a ranking according to the AHRQ for Wisconsin being #1 in quality. So with that, I am going to pause and give you all about a 5 to 10 minute break. But think about that. For all the things that we may need to improve in our health system and in our communities, and for all the adverse events and patient safety nets and other reviews that we've had to sit on, things gone wrong, think of all the things that we're doing right. So Wisconsin's leading the way in a lot of this work, and I think that that's why your organization is also important, because from a national perspective, it's going to help put you all as social workers on the map for the great work that you all do as social workers in Wisconsin to make an impact. So with that, we'll take a maybe a 5 to 10 minute break. It's 1:21 right now, so we'll come back at 1:30. Go forward 2.
I'm gonna remember that next time. Okay.
I grew up a kid of 2 teachers, so that's why I had that minor and area of concentration in school, anything. When I was told, don't be a teacher. But this is where the teacher part of me comes out. This is the good part. It's where the rubber meets the road. This is where we're going to throw our skills and kind of some of the concepts we're talking about will come together. And I just got my phone up. I just didn't want to be distracted by work calling.
No problem.
I'm good. I just took out Syria, New York Times, Florida Times.
What is the power guy on the original accident or something?
Well, I'll keep going, okay? So what you will see in front of you, for those of you in the room here, are a couple of materials. There are yellow binders, 5, that are standing up in a variety of areas around our rectangular tables. That's here in the classroom at UW. And for those of you that are online, you will not be able to see this. But what we are looking at are our emergency preparedness toolkit binders, which if you were at our fall presentation, everyone in that session got one of these. And at the very end, I'll take us to the website and online link where you can pull up these materials, you can order them, and you can also print out certain sections of the handouts that I've also provided you. Then in front of you, immediately in front of you, everyone should have 2 of everything. So they're like cardstock weight of materials that have come from these emergency preparedness toolkits. So I'd like to highlight, there's a postcard, which also has the web link, and it has a picture that I took of our governor's appointed council chairperson and their emergency preparedness subcommittee person. So this is where an idea in a room at quarterly meetings became a product, a deliverable. And this deliverable has become something tangible that now patients and families can actively use to help them prepare for emergencies around the home or around the community. It can be a fire, you gotta get your stuff and go, or it can be flooding is coming and you have somebody knocking at your door telling you you have to evacuate your home. So along with this are the to-go bags, which I have sitting up at the front of our classroom, and the binders come in as to-go bags. So as we go through our small group activity, which will begin about 1:45, you'll have 5 work groups, and on the whiteboard in the classroom, I've written up several scenarios, 5 age groups, that will just kind of go clockwise around the room, and your group, however you divvy up, will work on that population, and we'll use some of the materials that you got. You got 2 of each, so you got one that you can write notes on, and then one that you can have as an example, so you can take it to a team meeting and say, hey, we really need to get this product, because then we can also use this one form, or we can start helping patients become more compliant. So those are materials. Everybody okay? So this portion, the last portion of our interactive group session, will really focus on those 3 key areas of empathy, altruism, and advocacy. So here you will see a picture on the left, sorry, turn around, on the left of two gentlemen. They look like young adults. They are in front of an iPad, which is known as assistive technology. So one of them may be using it to communicate. And they're hugging. And then on the other side, the right-hand side of the PowerPoint, you will see a Wordle, which has all these different synonyms for empathy, altruism, and advocacy. So I think throughout today, you guys have hit on various concepts and topics and ideas and perspectives, and now we're going to pull it all together. So I'd like for us to think about our roles in helping patients and the role of empathy, altruism, and advocacy. We have to first think about what these concepts are. So take a look at this picture. What do you see? Next, I'd like for you to think about the words that best describe empathy, altruism, and advocacy. And take a look at this Wordle. Everyone can use aspects of empathy, altruism, and advocacy in their life. And nurses and social workers are unique in a position to use these concepts in their daily work. But I don't think that we go to work every day thinking, I'm going to be empathetic, I'm going to be altruistic, I'm going to be an advocate. It's just something about who we are as professionals. I like to think of it as the parallels that we have in our two disciplines. Next. So just by definition, empathy incorporates self-awareness, management of relationships, management of feelings, and motivation. On the management of relationships bullet point, this also means managing your relationships with your physician team, right? I remember a nephrologist that was very rigid and very prescriptive and very old school, and patients had to be compliant. And their caregivers had to ensure that compliance, or else there was abuse and neglect. And that wasn't always true. And she was not known for her empathy. But boy, when the chips were down, and there was a decision about dialysis, or how much of the dialyze, I always get that verb wrong. There she was, 7 a.m. in the morning. She's a little more warm and fuzzy. But she was just stuck in her doing provider role, right? That decision making. That didn't mean that she wasn't empathetic. That didn't mean that she wasn't warm and fuzzy. She just didn't give patients and families a hug. And from where she sat, in order to have a positive health outcome, she had to look at things from black and white perspective, right? You comply with your diet, you blow up, and you need to be dialyzed more, you need Lasix, you know, all your blood pressure sky high, you're not compliant with your blood pressure meds. A person can be as compliant as they can be, but their body sometimes makes those decisions. So I think empathy is what makes us as professionals able to help those other people in our professional relationships become a little more understanding. Or we buffer the relationship between the physician and the patient and family, right? It's a love-hate relationship. I've never heard a patient that comes out of a room and says, I hate my doctor, or I love coming here. They will say, I love my social worker, or I love my nurse. But it's that interaction and the management of our relationships with the patient and family and with our own team that can really make or break, I think, the health outcomes. So just being aware of that. Anyone have anything to comment on that? I think that can sometimes be what drives us to burnout too, right? We do what we do well, and the patient is happy and they go home. But at the end of the day, you're pulled in the back room and, well, you couldn't do this, or you didn't do that, or can you take care of this? And here we are making it happen. I dream of Jeannie making that magic happen. Who can relate to that? It's a thankless job.
I have a magic wand in my office.
You do?
I just sparkle on. I bring it out when I am asked to do crazy things.
And it's okay if in your relationship, you sometimes call people like difficult surgeons, on the carpet and say, the only way I can make this happen is with my magic wand, or if I get my Mickey Mouse shoes on, right? Because my nickname is Mickey, I'm short for Michele. I really can't make any more magic happen than is happening here. I really can't make this family love you anymore. Or I can't make them like you. It's a love-hate relationship. They love us, they hate the position. You're laughing. You don't know any of these people, do you? What about residents? Well, let's just throw those people in the mix, right? They know everything. They just got out of school last week. July 1, they have a new contract. They're coming to your system.
Got two coming.
You gotta take orders from them because they have a license. That's the time to go on vacation. So, the other thing that I want to say about part of this content came from a series that DHS is now giving in their employee development, based on the book Emotional Intelligence. I have asked, can you teach these IME workers empathy? I talked to my mom, who's a fourth grade teacher. She's a very loving, warm Chinese American lady. Didn't grow up here in the U.S. You can't teach empathy. You're my empathetic child. You became a nurse. Your sister, who's a teacher, she's not warm and fuzzy. She works in the church. She provides people with meals. That's her extent of empathy. Okay, well, we got that taken care of, Mom, but I still have to do my job and teach people down in the street. So I had already looked at this book, and what's interesting is emotional intelligence. That is just the ability to refrain from judging others, refrain from painting unwanted silver linings, recognizing that another person feels a certain way, so that physician that talks down to the patient, that night nurse that was judgy and woke the patient up and told them that they ate all this stuff during the day that made them gain weight. Those are not very empathetic actions. So now what I'd like for you to think about is what it means to be self-aware, what it means to manage your interpersonal relationships, and what it means to manage your feelings. So when we focus on our scenarios next, we're going to use some of these concepts for you to formulate what your solution is in a very short period of time, because that's how it goes in healthcare. So altruism, it's a sense of unconditional concern for the welfare of others where you don't get compensated, but we get a paycheck, so that's okay. It can be expressed at the level of an individual, a group, or a larger social system. So individual, when you're assigned as a primary social worker or case manager to a patient family. Group, when you're responsible for a service line and you have to work with one or a group of physician or advanced providers, right? You're still getting a paycheck. The patient's not giving you the money, but when they can't get their weekend care and you've got a nurse who says, you know, I can do home care. No, you can't. You can't accept pay unless it's on-call pay, which I know has been huge in some of our dialysis areas, right? Our dialysis techs, our nurses, they get on-call pay. Social workers get on-call pay. But our job far exceeds the on-call hours. No one gets on-call. No one gets on-call pay? No.
We do.
You get on-call?
Well, write that down on your system.
Oh, no, we don't want to be on call.
No, you don't want to be on call, okay. But this is,
Don't want that. Take note.
Our whole carriers do, but that is, they're never on-call.
So let's move to the next one. And then altruism in professional practice is reflected by concern and advocacy. The concept of a nurse and social worker being altruistic means being altruistic sometimes as a professional, but it can also mean that you're altruistic to the detriment of the patient. So how many of you have stayed after hours? You're supposed to be out there at 5. You know, there's a Little League baseball game going on, it's going on without you. And guess what? Everybody else has left the clinic, but you're trying to arrange for transportation so that patient can get home. How many of you have thought of just give them a ride home? well, now we have these things called therapeutic boundaries, so you can't do that anymore. Nothing about me without me. So that's a concept in independent living. That means for patients and families, we don't make decisions for them. They should be there making those decisions, and we should be there supporting those decisions. So that's that team rounding at the bedside. It's great to do bedside rounding, but maybe you should do it some other way. Maybe you should be in a conference room where they're comfortable, right? Where everybody can sit around and be on mutual terms. Next, advocacy. Core values of advocacy. So I'm not getting into an ethical discussion. I'm going to leave that to my colleague who's a lawyer in my office. And we talk about follow-up sessions where we can get into a little bit more of the ethical kinds of things. But core values of advocacy, including preserving human dignity, patient equality, freedom from suffering. So patient equality, making sure that physician takes as much time with patient and family number 1 as they do with patient and family number 10 or patient and family number 20. So that means that they have to scale back their clinic appointments and the number of people they see on that particular clinic day so everybody can get equal amount of time to meet their needs. That's a conversation we have to help them have. Or if more providers are needed, right? Maybe you need to advocate for an advanced practice provider to join the group so that they can also spend more time from the prescribing physician. So, next, key takeaways, empathy is being aware. Oops, she didn't go back. One more.
Back?
Yeah, I'll stick
don't
with
know
that.
what-
Empathy is being aware of what another is feeling, what motivates us to act to help. Altruism is the concept of feeling motivated to help one another without regard for compensation or reward, and can enhance the experience of the nurse and social worker and patient and family. And then advocacy is important for nurses and social workers and patients and families. And advocacy promotes human dignity and can help patients move towards self-advocacy. So that's where that MI comes in. So key do's and don'ts. I think you probably all know these. It is the next one, the do's and don'ts. And then it used to be all on one page. So this just recaps it, but if ever you have a student or someone new to practice and you want to just remind them of some key bullet points, these do's and don'ts are a really good way to frame it, although don't sounds kind of negative. Sometimes there's no way to get around it. Go to the next one, the don'ts. The silver lining, don't be the only advocate. Let the patient and family be self-advocates. Don't judge, talk about judging, and don't do for the person past they can do. So I'm going to get to the slide of partnerships with patients. This is where the rubber meets the road. So in our little group activity, we're going to identify gaps, one gap or two, an opportunity, one opportunity. You're going to work together as a group to do collaborative planning, and you're going to consider resources and referrals. So it's at 150, we'll go into 155 in your small group work. And then this is where you'll really have to learn the bullet point, and this is how teams go. You'll have to take about 30 seconds to tell your group and what resources you identify. You're going to pick one thing to solve. This is really hard for a lot of people. It has a lot of details. So, group number 1, the youth in transition. So the age group of that is 17 and a half to 22. Group number 2, a 25-year-old to 40-year-old-ish. We're getting a young adult there, you know, all those life events that typically happen, college, job, marriage, birth, death. 41 to 55-ish is group number 3. So this is a person maybe who has an acute onset of kidney disease, right? And their world changing. Something. You come up with the details of your scenario. And then group 4, the 60 plus population. And then group number 5, the vets. I think since you are Wisconsin UW folks, that can be a good one. Okay, so you can give us 5 minutes. What you're looking at is look at the materials that you have here. Think of a time when you were helping a patient and family that may have been in this category, and maybe identify 1 or 2 things that you can help in their problem solving and planning, and something that you could have used during intervention for a resource and a referral.
Yeah, but that group, right, they're gonna have
So you.
I mean, what about those who don't care?
Providers and.
Right. And, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and we have extreme transition from, yeah. And they're gonna have more and more of in their life and transition.
So I wrote prompts up here. So you get some of the highlights. Think of a patient and family. Identify 1 to 2 problems or barriers. Make a simple plan. For the underachievers, just choose 1 thing. If you're good at, it's been a long time. Simplifying things per day. If you're an overachiever, you'll choose 3.
Oh, because, yeah.
You still have to choose 1 thing. Right.
Where our parent was. Yeah.
Alright, I mean, that's, nothing like taking out an investment in your island. It's easy. And then there's resources there. Okay, so I'm gonna give you your time.
Yeah, no problem about it.
4 seconds. And this is kind of how it goes in your clinical practice, right?
I'm gonna throw a wrinkle.
All right. Okay. You're wrapping it up. Yep. This never comes up. No. Okay. I'm gonna bring us back together. Now I've given you all 1 additional last minute referral and resources to think about. Abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Welcome to the real world, right?
Yeah, I know, when I went.
Okay, so group number 1, you can transition. That's a 17.5 to 22-year-old. That's what's known as the target group. Okay, quick, go. What was your problem or barrier?
Our speaker's over in the corner over there. Bail now.
Our problem was that
they think they're gonna live forever, so they don't take any of it seriously.
Okay, and what was your plan?
Our plan was to work together with the person transitioning from the juvenile to the adult system and making sure that they have what they need.
And one thing to solve.
One thing to solve is making sure that person has what they need in the adult system based on what they need in the juvenile.
And are the resources that we have, what I really like is this where you tell mom to step back. At 18, that minor is their own adult, and they should be carrying their own emergency card, right? Mama doesn't always get the information. And mama doesn't always get to give the information. So really important, I think, a role we can take in that social dynamic. Okay, referral can go to ADRC for the youth and transition planning. It can also go to workforce development for vocational planning. And if they aren't already plugged into Social Security disability income, that can occur too. If they do have SSDI, what might you want to be thinking about? Financial exploitation, right? Or a potential for neglect, self-neglect, self-care neglect. Okay, group 2, 25 to 40-year-olds. Oh, I've gotten my life started and I'm an independent young adult. Or not. Okay, what's the problem?
40-year-old male with 2 children, he's single parenting, who's on dialysis. He is coming regularly and he loses his housing, so initial problem. Immediate problem is housing. The simple plan is to help him get to housing that is supportive of him getting his dialysis. So nephrologist is over here caring about the details of his lab work, so we're just getting him to dialysis. So that's our focus. That's the one thing we're solving today, and then we'll build the layers in. It's just a temporary housing plan that still lets him get dialysis. Resources and referrals, had we had time to get to it, would be the housing development people,
Yeah.
ADRC.
Getting him on disability, yep.
Yeah, he's already on disability, he's a dialysis patient, but
He was,
like housing, yeah. Effectively, housing.
Is it your problem in the health system?
Housing. As a social worker, our ultimate goal is psychosocial stability as it relates to dialysis and our state status, so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, many people have stayed in the hospital longer because they didn't have a place to be discharged to. Yeah, so, just being aware of our perceptions of judging people that live at home with their parents or couch surf. I've heard of some young adults that have a condition that all of a sudden no longer work, waiting for all those other systems to kick in place. But yet they're still kind of in that college age mode, right? Or it may be a reason for some that they end up getting married. And then you've got a completely different set of problems. Okay, number 3, group 3, 41 to 55-year-old. Life is great, you're middle-aged, you got debt.
Sure, I had major issues, but I will just narrow down on 41-year-old white female with a significant other. She'd been ill for quite a long time, no income stream at all. Now he's unemployed and their car broke down and they can't afford to fix it. A lot of stuff going on there. I guess first thing, identifying how to get them to treatment. Obviously that first barrier, making sure the transportation's there. And then looking at all the other issues, disability benefits specialist, referral, ADRC, food pantry. Luckily she had Medicaid, so coverage was there for her. Just kind of picking that first one and then dealing with all the rest as we kind of went through because it was so overwhelming.
Good. So if this person is on the move too, they've got a lot of flux. Having that to-go bag and having all their paperwork in one place, especially if they're getting, rides from different places, can be very important because they may not have a car where they can keep their paperwork or their bag, right?
Sure.
So they've got to be ready for the non-emergency medical treatment or non-emergency medical transportation van to come, or a cab. So again, keeping relevant resource materials, insurance papers, whatever, all in one place is really important. Okay, the 60-plus-year-olds, and I know we're running like 2 minutes behind, but go ahead.
All right. So we identified this age group to be one that might be deteriorating in their physical or functional abilities. And then the barrier to possibly staying in house would be perceptions of, I'm a burden to society, a burden to my children or my family, and I don't want the house. So the resources and plan that we thought of was to refer to the ERC. And then we had mentioned that in your county, in Dane County, they actually will come in during dialysis to me. So then you can use the dialysis team, the patient, and the ERC together. It doesn't interrupt their schedule or their treatment. They come in, but have a care conference, and we'll come here with the resources and stuff.
Yeah, I guess looking at this, so what to look out for, I guess that's more of that, abuse. You're inviting strangers into your home to take care of you maybe, or maybe you're transitioning into an assisted living or CVR or a nursing home where it's not family, not that family can't be a source of abuse either, but just more vulnerable in that way. Great, and then the vet, hoarding's a big issue. There's a hoarders task force now. Not only is there an abuse task force, but there's now a hoarding task force. Hopefully they'll show up at my house this weekend. I've got some funds I got to clean in my garage. But for many folks with chronic conditions and disabilities, it really is a problem. And for the aging population, it's important that we don't judge and label. The pack rat or hoarder, it's really a time of self-care. And that, and then while you're talking, remember, you get one problem to solve.
PTSD, assessing treatment. And our thought was if we could look at VH through telehealth or telephone or video on like a tablet that they could do during treatment so that it wasn't a separate trip to like a VH appointment. Might decrease stigma that way too, and then that same telehealth provider could do some PTSD vet training for staff at dialysis.
Awesome. So let's give our intern a round of applause. People, I'll set you up. So I just want to thank you all for having me today. What I'm going to do really quick, we have Google up. I want to show you how to be able to go to get some of these resources right from the comfort of your own desktop. So, DHS Wisconsin, and then what we're going to do is I'd like to show you where you can get to aging and disability resources. So we just type this here. If you don't know where your ADRC is, you can go here and click on this, or you can click on the find. You can tell consumers to do this, because a lot of times you don't get this one story, right? You get their entire family story. Or you get the family story of people down in Illinois who are going to move over to Beloit so that their child can get on care, our care plan, right? Insurance, and get in the UW system, right? So then you can just hover around the county, or you can go to this link. And I like to share this with my social work groups because, or case managers, because you can hover over whatever county, right? So I don't know a lot of people in Adams County, so this is great. Let's click on Adams County. There's a 1-800 number. There's the different offices. Oh, there aren't just one Adams County offices, and that's because the ADRC in that area is what's known as a regional ADRC. So unlike Dane County, single county, so each county has its own office. So that's really key, but it's also important for you all to make friends. So then I go out from here, and then we're going to do this to find an independent living center. And they can help do home modification assessments, assistive technology. We have an ICANN Connect grant. So for those folks that are deaf and blind, they could get an iPad or a phone or some other communication device. And again, find an independent living center. Right here, we do the same thing. Those are out of our offices. And again, let's go to Adams County. That should be it's a little different, but that should be access. No, that's mid-state. So mid-state independent living choices. Don't be surprised when you click on that and you actually see that that's in Portage. Is it going slow or did I not click? It's user error. And then there, it goes to the independent living centered nonprofit site. And then one last one. There we go. So then you can see the services. So some of the independent living centers also have some mental health services, which is really key. This is technology is what I want to show you. They also have a lot of loan equipment, durable medical equipment. So this is really key. I know a lot of the communities have loan closets for DME, but this is also really good. And then
wheelchair that goes anywhere.
yeah, this is the action tracker. I love this one for people that are wheelchair bound can actually go camping or on a farm. This is free. They can check this out for free. Free is good. No income requirement. So, and then I like, the big button line phones. And then the last thing I want to show you is, DHS publication. I'm just going to show you that one pager. And so you'll get all of these links that I'm pulling up by email after the session. Stephanie, do you have anything that you want to wrap up?
I don't think so. We have, evaluation.
Yep. The evaluation will be online, so we'll get that sent out to you. I usually go ahead and send it with the meeting minutes. So I will try to send that out on Monday, if not by the very latest on Tuesday.
So if ever you're looking for a DHS publication, whether it's a fact sheet, a guide, or a manual, you just go to the DHS publications page. You'll see search publications. I'm putting the skills right here. So this should take just a second. You scroll down. And then there at the bottom, skills for helping customers with chronic conditions and disabilities. And then this is that one-page fact sheet that I created, which can help you with some of your other service providers, or if you're doing a lunch and learn, just dusting off skills that we need to all help ourselves and others remember. So it encompasses all of the principles of motivational interviewing, as well as empathy, altruism, and advocacy. And then at the bottom, you'll see to find my adrc.org. So that's how you would get to that. And I did try and minimize paper today. So this was one of the ways that I decided I wouldn't do a color print. So that is it. And I will be sending an email to Stephanie and the group for you to get with all these hyperlinks. And thank you.
Before you guys pack up real quick for our next presentation that's in June, I'll send out something to the listserv because the person that's coming, one of the speakers that's coming is going to speak about like Medicaid benefits and we'll serve with you guys wanted to know more about that. She had a couple questions just so we could really tailor the presentation to what we want to know. So I'll send out her questions to you and that way we can give this person feedback on what is important for you guys to learn and that way it's as relevant as possible. The other thing, so for the, I can't expecting a baby in August. So I actually will, probably the next 2 meetings, I will be here in person. Hopefully I can make it back for the October one. We might have to show one now, but so we'll see how that all works out. But until then, I'll still be working, with stuffing and everything like that. So we'll take care of it. But just if you guys don't see me, you're having a boy. Thank you, yes, first one, so.
So that puts you in group number 2, right?
Yeah, I'm not beyond 40 yet, and I'm at least 25. So.
And you're establishing your family?
Yep, so the team will be attached to evaluation, and there should be two separate evaluations for the two different.
Oh my God.
Thank you for your time and for coming.
The exams go all the way down.
Oh.
Water up there.
Thank you for your
You too. Take care of you.
You can know, plan at the time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.